Today is truly a Big News Wednesday. And thus, Jayar Jackson emerges. How's it going, JR?
What's going on, brother? I should probably pull my mic in front of me. Hey, coming off of Big News Tuesday on the watch list, I figure we might as well go for the next one, whatever we used to call
it. We did have fun yesterday. I appeared for the second time, I think, on the watch list.
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun talking about the arraignment and talking about the political violence and aliens. Definitely some alien talk. So we've got a lot more of that coming up today. The aliens, I mean, not the arraignment. I'm kidding. Anyway, Trump, of course, was arrested. Let's say that again. Trump was arrested. Trump was arrested. Former President Trump was arrested. Did you hear? The president was arrested. That's a person who thinks he's still president. But anyway, all of this is fun. All of the news is fun. And we're gonna have some fun with it. Not only talking about some of what happened following the arraignment yesterday, but some of the, I would say, warning signs that we should take from some of the stuff that was said, both by Donald Trump, by some of his supporters. We've got more of that, but potentially good news in that area. We're gonna have a little bit of a debate pretty soon. And then I wanna talk a little bit about media coverage of Donald Trump. I think there are some interesting developments in that, and AOC weighs in on what's going on with Trump. I've been waiting to hear her thoughts. It's a lot of fun. You can tell that she's having fun with it. So we'll be talking about that and a whole lot more besides, including bad news for Joe Manchin. Some of the people who really wanted him to be president might not be as interested anymore because they found someone cooler. So feel bad for him in advance. That's all in the first hour of the show. Coming up in the aftermath, we've got more AI-based scams potentially looking to rob you blind. So we're gonna warn you about what those might look like. And Harrison Ford finally weighs in on the question of our age. Is it okay to punch a Nazi? So that's gonna be a lot of fun. And then Jayar and I are gonna have a different sort of debate coming out of that. With all that said, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button and sharing the stream, that would be great so that people know we're live. And if you wanna send us any comments, tweets, or super chats, we'll respond as we go. Just making sure of the date. Yes, I wanted to let you know, coming up, not only our program and a lot of great shows. I'm gonna be leading the Young Turks later on today, but our Juneteenth special is this Friday, June 16th. Senator Nina Turner, Mayor Mondale Robinson, Sharon Reed, Adrian Lawrence, and Jayar Jackson himself. So that sounds like it's gonna be an awesome special.
Absolutely, absolutely. Celebrating Juneteenth officially Monday. First year TYT, we're actually not doing any shows on that day, holiday.
I know, we'd been working up until this year. Okay, here's the thing, this is behind the scenes. I have a little bit of problem with the preview matter. So what we're gonna do is, we're gonna go to JR, a one shot of JR. JR, you're gonna preview what you're most excited to talk about on the watch list, and I'm gonna try to fix this thing. Let's do that.
The watch list today. Okay, so today on the watch list we are doing, actually, this is the main, not the main story, but this is probably the most exciting one. So a TikToker out in Belgium had decided to teach his family a lesson because apparently he wasn't getting paid enough attention to this extended family, like his parents, siblings. He's an older gentleman, so he faked his own death.
Fun.
Showed up at his own funeral and made a surprise appearance because they need to respect and understand who he is a bit more.
God,
did it work? We'll find out.
I don't know, we're talking about it. Seems like it worked, but everyone tune into the watch list for more details. With that, I think we should jump into the big news of the day, starting off with this.
I did everything right and they indicted me.
How do you respect that guy who does the voice like that? Don't do the voice. Indicted me. But anyway, they did indict him. He did not, in fact, do everything right, but they did indict him. Trump was booked, fingerprinted, and led to a courtroom on the 13th floor of the federal district court in Miami, where his lawyer entered a plea of not guilty on his behalf. I'm just gonna read the first part again. Mr. Trump was booked, fingerprinted, and led to a courtroom. Get used to that sort of stuff. We're not gonna go through a ton of what happened there because it's pretty much what we expected. You probably know about it. There's just one other like fun paragraph I want to read for you from the New York Times coverage of this. Mr. Trump, who spent much of the arraignment with his arms folded in a grim expression, and Mr. Smith, a flinty former war crimes prosecutor rarely seen in public since taking charge of the case, did not talk to each other at the hearing or even exchange glances. Oh, Trump was in a bad mood on arraignment day. Jack Smith ruined arraignment day for him. Anyway, we're not gonna give you too much more of Trump's initial reaction. We're gonna cover select parts of his comments that came later on. But I did wanna give you, in addition to that, like, they indicted me. We got maybe the Trumpiest bleat, like a bleat that sums up the Trump presidency in as few words as possible, and all of them in full caps lock. On my way to courthouse, witch hunt, MAGA.
Jesus.
That's the Trump presidency. I'm on my way to the courthouse, witch hunt, MAGA. Anyway, he was not having the best day. He acknowledged it as one of the saddest days in the history of our country. We are a nation in decline. And look, I know that in the modern era, a lot of people have main character syndrome. They think that all of this is about them and we're just NPCs in their world. Not true, in fact. And in fact, the fact that you are a technically man in decline does not mean that we are a nation in decline. In theory, the Department of Justice finally doing its job should be a signal of optimism and hope. Our fate is not necessarily tied to yours. Although if 2024 goes the wrong way, perhaps it will be once again. Anyway, we're gonna have some brief updates. We're gonna get into a little bit of what he had to say, but JR, what do you make of all this?
I'm still trying to figure out exactly what it is that he thinks these things will do. I mean, look, no one has talked about the actual things that have gone down, the indictments, the charges in it, the things that they've revealed, even just some of the things they revealed that they discovered in that. Everything that people are saying about it in denial of it or in defense of him, including himself, is a witch hunt. What about Hunter? What about Hillary? Nothing about those things that you guys are addressing and seeing in this indictment. This reason, the second reason, and the third reasons are why those things don't make sense, and it actually doesn't stick to me. I can declassify anything I want anytime I want, before, after, during presidency. Not the case. That's probably the only defense, close to defense that they've even come with. But so now, after he's actually been indicted and he's there, only thing left is time to politicize it further. I guess that's all that's left. It's all that was there in the first place. You know, if their supporters aren't gonna actually read or look at anything behind it, they're just gonna listen to him. Which leads me to the last point about just the beginning of this. If Donald Trump goes away, all of MAGA, as he put MAGA at the back of it, because that's a call to all you guys who've called yourself MAGA, you have to continue to be on this same addiction to me. If he goes away, you've got Ron DeSantis. You've got Chris Christie, you've got Nikki Haley, you've got Tim Scott, you've got a litany of other crazed Republicans who will do the same horrible policies that Donald Trump did. We've discovered it has nothing to do with policies. Republicans don't switch up on policy to that much of a degree. It's based off of this one guy and then this addiction to him. That's why people call it a cult.
Yeah. 100%. But we are gonna have to see how durable the cult is. We have some people questioning that we're gonna get to in just a sec. Little brief updates, just things to keep in the back of your head as you move forward, waiting for Trump's next appearance in court or his lawyer's next appearance. And by the way, buckle up, gird your loins, because it might take a while. This is not gonna necessarily be resolved by this winter. That's what Chris Christie said, but not necessarily. We know that Trump was ordered Tuesday not to speak about the case with Walt Nauta, his aide and co-defendant. US Magistrate Judge Jonathan Goodman also barred the former president from speaking with any witnesses. And the only reason I point that out is not because it's weird. This is a normal thing in cases like this. It's that he is definitely gonna violate that, 100%. Oh wait, he's definitely going to. I was speaking into the future. He's already violated it, definitely. Will there be consequences for that? Stay tuned to find out. Trump is worried about consequences, and I know that because he is now fundraising over the possibility that he'll die in prison. He's sending emails telling people like, I could be in prison for 400 years. I don't think that that's likely. I don't think that his heart has 5 years on it, but he is trying to raise a lot of money. He probably is raising quite a bit of money, which is, he can do that or whatever. It's just such a weird thing that it would work. That in the wake of yet another arraignment, people are still like, I'm barely holding on economically, but wealthy East Coast billionaire, please take my final dollars. It's super weird, man.
So that you won't die in prison off of the things that they've alleged that you've done that they appear to have tons of evidence on. Ignore all that, but take my money. It's outrageous.
The weird thing is there's a lot of fatalism in America. Religion can cause fatalism. Some of these conspiracy theories, I think, can cause fatalism. But I would like to use some of that baked in fatalism amongst the QAnoners to reassure them, because I know there's a lot of anxiety right now about Donald Trump potentially going to prison. But I want you to remember, never forget that you think that everything that happens is Q's plan. Ergo, if he goes to prison, that's Q's plan. If he rots in prison for years, that's Q's plan.
True.
You seem to be questioning the plan. So why are you questioning it? Just lay down and accept the inevitable when it comes to Donald Trump going to prison. It's all part of Q's designs.
I will appoint a real special prosecutor to go after the most corrupt president in the history of the United States of America, Joe Biden, and the entire Biden crime family. Name a special prosecutor.
So he's gonna do a special prosecutor. They're gonna get Biden once Biden's not president anymore, and the crowd goes wild. Lock him up, lock him up. I only play that both to remind you of sort of the stakes of Donald Trump becoming president. For Biden, I don't particularly care about that too much, but this is a guy who definitely believes that government can and should be weaponized against your political opponents. He is saying, I'm gonna go after my political opponents once they're not president anymore, and the crowd loves it, which is a reminder that they do not actually think that it is illegitimate to investigate former presidents. In fact, they're very enthusiastic fans of the idea. So it's weird that they're so frustrated with what's going on right now. Anyway, he's promising revenge, JR. He's promising it. He doesn't keep a lot of his promises. I think this one might.
Yeah, it's almost like logic doesn't apply here. It's been their main defense. It's like the weaponization of our country. They had hearings on it, bro. They had congressional hearings about the weaponization of the justice system in our country to come after certain political figures only. And the lock her, him, it up chant has been going on for years. That's the main vein of everything that they've ever talked about. If we can't lock them up, let's go attack them. If we can't attack them, let's send someone else to attack them. It's all violence, aggression, and coming for someone. And then finally, when there's evidence behind something, potentially for one person, being this one, it's look what's going on with our justice system. This isn't America. We're a third world country. What kind of president and former president wants to go after their political opponents solely based on the fact that they're political opponents? Yo, check out these investigations into Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. I haven't talked about them because I'm still waiting for the evidence, which we still haven't seen. Comer's talking about it. The old man. I'm blanking on his name. They're all coming up with these empty expressions of how they found all this dirt on Joe Biden, videotapes, audio tapes, everything is popping up. We don't really see it. Maybe it's illegitimate. We don't know yet. This is the basis for their investigations. That's why nothing has come up yet. And one more time, if Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, anybody else you want to name that you hate has broken laws, I'm not sacrificing myself or giving them a bunch of money because I supported their policies before. But for some reason you will.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, good. Joe Biden's not my grandpa. I don't. If he did it, if he did it and it's on tape or whatever, then let's see that. Anyway, we haven't yet. That said, the vows of revenge were not just about investigating Joe Biden. He has a more immediate target in mind. Take a look at this.
He's a raging and uncontrolled Trump hater, as is his wife, who also happened to be the producer of that Michelle Obama puff piece. It was total puff piece. This is the guy I've got.
That is Donald Trump attacking Jack Smith, the special counsel who is investigating him or was investigating him. Donald Trump was apparently warned by allies, by aides, to not publicly attack Jack Smith, that it would not help him and in fact could hurt him. And clearly he decided to go in a different direction. That was not the most vicious attack that he's made against Jack Smith. He's called him a psycho and a bunch of other stuff. But once again, he did focus his attention just as much on the family of Jack Smith as on him, because Jack Smith's wife made a documentary or something. Again, if he appoints a special counsel to investigate Biden in a few years, and that person made a documentary about about how awesome Steve Bannon was, I have a feeling they're gonna be perfectly fine with it. So again, this is not a principle that the crowd is expressing. They just don't like this particular guy because he's investigating Donald Trump. But the idea of publicly attacking this guy, of putting so much focus on the family members when he knows the content of his audience, not great. I don't like it. I'll remind you that in social media posts, public remarks, close allies of Trump, including a member of Congress, we've talked about Andy Biggs, have portrayed the indictment as an act of war, called for retribution, and highlighted the fact that much of his base carries weapons. That's Kerry Lake right there. And experts on political violence warn that attacks against people or institutions become more likely, in fact, when elected officials or prominent media figures are able to issue threats or calls for violence with impunity, which is that's the status quo. That's where we're at right now. You can make these threats, specific ones, violent ones, and nothing will happen to you. And that's the prominent people. They're not the ones, of course, who are gonna do the attacking. They're just hoping to gin up the randos to do it. And those randos are getting ready. On far right websites, people shared tactics and techniques for attacking the building that they had the arraignment, discussed building gallows, trapping lawmakers in tunnels. On Instagram, Kimberly Guilfoyle posted a photo of Trump with the words "retribution is coming." Pete Santilli, by the way, who has a talk show, he declared that if he were the commandant of the Marine Corps, he just narrowly missed it too, I bet. He would order every single Marine assigned to the Marine Corps barracks to grab President Biden, throw him in zip ties in the back of a pickup truck and get him out of the White House. There he is specifically going out of his way to use the same sort of like binding technique that the people who tried to overthrow the US government on January 6th did. It's not a coincidence. One of his guests said that if it were legal and he had access, he would probably walk in and shoot General Mark Milley. So they're just openly fantasizing about who they would illegally lock up and who they would murder. And that's perfectly cool. There's no problem with that, JR.
He said if it was legal or if he had access, he'd walk in and shoot him. So what would make it legal to walk in and shoot someone? What circumstance would it be legal to walk in and shoot someone? And again, as Kimberly Guilfoyle also posted, vengeance or retribution. It's just revenge. So what part of this judicial system that they want to defund because of this normal process would then result in vengeance? That's third world country type of stuff. The same stuff they keep talking about is happening. And look, our country's in decline, wannabe dictator, all these things that they're pushing and going through all this process for, it's 100% what they're calling for. And I still don't know how the folks who are following it don't see it's exactly what they're doing and it's what they're a part of. Yeah. I don't know, man.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, it's dark. And again, they're not gonna do it. Like that dude, if he walked in and a general gave him a stern look, he'd pee his pants. But he is hoping to inspire others to more violent action. With that said, Donald Trump was really hoping that some sort of massive crowd of his supporters would be waiting for him in Miami, and that really didn't happen. Is that a good sign? Has Donald Trump's ability to inspire violent riots gone away, perhaps permanently? Well, they discussed it on MSNBC. Take a look at this.
Apparently, the Proud Boys who had planned, there was all the reporting in advance that they were going to march. They didn't show up, and maybe having their, their president, their leader, indicted on seditious conspiracy sobered the mind, and they said, you know what, maybe not.
I gotta tell you, both of these are exactly what I expected. After January 6th, a lot of lessons were learned. All the really bad ones are in prison already. And Donald Trump, I mean, I wasn't sure what to expect in Manhattan, but I went down there and I saw it, because he asked for them. He didn't ask so directly for them to come.
Well, he said, see you in Miami.
But because they refused to come to Manhattan, Trump knows better than any of us, they're not coming. Yeah. They are not coming. They won't come to Georgia. They're not coming. That stuff is completely over, exactly as I expected in both cases. He doesn't have that anymore. They're not going to do it for him again.
Yeah, look, that's definitely optimistic. And it's not like he doesn't have Lawrence O'Donnell doesn't have some evidence, I suppose. There was not a huge crowd. There were some. He thought Trump thought, or I should say, sorry, Trump wanted as many to come as possible. Miami police said they were expecting up to 50,000 pro and anti combined protesters. There were a few hundred, which is not much. And the similar sort of thing happened in Manhattan. George Santos was like 1/40th of the crowd in New York. So maybe there's some evidence. Of course, showing up for his arraignment isn't the same as showing up for Joe Biden's second inauguration, possibly. So what do you think about his little prediction there?
That he's kind of lost his steam here, and that's why nobody's showing up. That aspect, Lawrence O'Donnell, yeah. Well, this is the thing, and maybe it's with the steam. They've been talking about this since before, even when the January 6th hearings were happening, and all this stuff was really coming forward about everything he's been a part of and the degree to which he's looking to take down democracy. But when it comes to something like this, I think it's partially the things that Republicans complained about before the midterm elections, which were a disappointment, which was, job, money, daycare, inflation, back to more economic issues, housing, those things that people have to worry about every day. They ain't got time for this. You're gonna travel somewhere to go hang out in front of a courthouse for this guy who's going inside for these potential crimes he's committed, and we're gonna skip taking my kid to school. I'm gonna skip getting lunch. I'm gonna skip trying to figure out how I'm gonna get paid more so I can make rent because rent just went up again. Like, they're ignoring the things that they riled their support up about. And then now they want them to just show up and forget that they ever had any kind of other responsibilities. I think people are starting to figure out that they have to do something else besides kiss Donald Trump's ass.
Yeah, it's possible that economically there's incentives not to take part. It's possible that they're just too busy. Like, your average MAGA person is probably standing in front of their fridge looking in there and being like, is my relish woke? There's a lot to keep track of on a daily basis. Which company's selling rainbow shirts? So I can understand why they wouldn't necessarily have time to show up. That said, I would not let my guard down if I were law enforcement on future events. We don't know for sure that his ability to do that is gone. I like the idea of it. I'm not necessarily convinced.
Yeah, it doesn't take 50,000 people for something really bad to happen. It takes a couple hundred.
Exactly. Yeah, it could be one person, breaking into a lawmaker's house with a hammer. We already know that. The mainstream media made a lot of mistakes when it came to Donald Trump back in 2016 and also mostly 2020, but they're assuring us they have learned from those mistakes. Take a look at this.
We do not intend to carry these remarks live. As we have said before in these circumstances, there is a cost to us as a news organization to knowingly broadcast untrue things. We are here to bring you the news. It hurts our ability to do that if we live broadcast what we fully expect in advance to be a litany of lies and false accusations, no matter who says them.
As I told you, we're not, and the audience, we're not carrying his remarks live because, frankly, he says a lot of things that are not true and sometimes potentially dangerous.
So that is Rachel Maddow and Jake Tapper across CNN and MSNBC. If you would collect two people who are, I guess, able to perhaps speak for the network at this point, it's probably those two for those two networks. We'll see if this policy continues. But CNN is in the post Chris Licht era. They know how angry people were with how that town hall went, and so now they're switching it up. And Jayar, I wonder what you think about that. What do you think about their new strategy?
I mean, I feel like they've said this before in smaller doses, maybe for a particular speech, but maybe not as blatant about, we could see it coming type of approach. It took this long, it's been kind of talked about. People floated and said, why do you guys keep covering or carrying these things in total? I understand why people talk about it later in parts to at least dispel the disinformation or to fact check. I get all that. In fact, we talk about all these things all the time too. So I don't think it should never be heard, but at least it should be heard with this disclaimer of, we're expecting some falsehoods because this is the guy that's under the microscope. I mean, in what other world would we have someone that's literally in investigations, been arrested, has had evidence put forward that looks pretty damning, and then the process is then, let's let him talk for an hour and a half about how none of this makes any sense, and we don't talk about any of the things that we've actually seen, because that's the approach it's been whenever you just let him go. So I get it, and I actually like it. And if it becomes a norm, then cool. But if this is just a one-off thing, and the next, we have him carrying the next time he's lying for another hour, what's the point?
Yeah. Look, I don't know how much of this is just, sort of a PR attempt to respond to what happened with Chris Licht. Obviously, that's only for CNN. MSNBC doesn't care about that. But maybe it's a good faith thing. I'm not inclined to believe that anything that these major companies are doing is entirely good faith. But I would also say that while I like, assuming this is true, that they're willing to learn from people's criticism of them in the past, I also think that it's possible that maybe they're going too far with it. Like the criticism, I can only speak for myself, the criticism that I've made. The criticism is really about, it's not that you've played him. It's recently that you put him in a town hall for like 90 minutes straight, let him run roughshod over the moderator. But even more important maybe than that is that you filled it with like a stadium of Trump fans to like hoot and holler over everything he said. That goes way beyond just broadcasting his remarks. You don't have to have like, a pack of chimpanzees jumping around loving everything that he's saying. You don't need that. And then, the older criticism was they would just put his speech up for like 2 hours straight with no refutation. He didn't even need to be giving the speech for them to be broadcasting it. It could just be like a podium. So that's the criticism. You can play his stuff. You don't have to delight in it. You don't have to like extend it the whole time. But you should be refuting it. It's important that your viewers do know what he stands for, or at least claims to stand for. So I think that there's like a happy medium that doesn't let him run roughshod, but also make sure that people have the information that they need. That would be my only criticism.
It's the new territory, John. Quick last thing on this. It's new territory because before it was making money for them to talk about Donald Trump. 2016, 15, when he started and first jumped in, that was making money. Every network was like, oh, this is great. We're making tons of money off this. Who cares what he's saying? He's not gonna be president. That was their process. Then he won and they're like, oh, damn, what do we do? And the criticism showered all over them. Now that we're looking at potentially even worse case scenario of this, they're thinking we're not gonna make money off of this anymore. Maybe that's the bottom line of their decision. It's like, yo, people are tired of it. And now we've been exposed for making money off of it. Maybe that's our only motivation. Look, Chris Licht is gone now. Maybe we should make sure that they know we want them here because maybe they'll leave if we continue doing this.
Yeah, maybe. That said, while I don't necessarily have too much care for the things that are discussed there. Sometimes on the news, they'll bring up a point that I think is not necessarily a bad point. Chris Hayes, I think, is probably overrepresented amongst, there's not a lot of great people on these channels, but he brought up, I think, a pretty good point about the terms of Trump's release in comparison to others. Take a look at this.
I did think the terms of his release are just worth pausing on. Reality Winner was a 28-year-old security contractor who wanted to basically alert journalists to the fact that Russia had indeed criminally meddled in the 2016 election. She printed out one document and she mailed it to an outlet. The FBI showed up at her house and she was detained for every day after they came to that house until she got out of prison for 4 years. This was not a person where there was like, oh, sure, you want to fly in your private jet? You want to keep your passport? You want to go hang around? Like, that's not how they rolled. And the dude that they just got in Massachusetts, do you think he's running around the country? Do you think he's in his RV? You think he's going to have a summer vacation? You think he's going to go to his favorite golf spot in New Jersey? No, of course not. So like, yes, at one level, there's a certain amount of deference because he's ex-president. Second of all, there's a logistical question of like, how do you deal with security? Third of all, like, I understand institutional concerns, but no one should be under any illusion that this guy is being treated differently and better because he is the ex-president and has been throughout this process and all of these processes.
Yeah, look, I think how well he's being treated, how little restriction there is on anything about him is definitely noteworthy. And we can have that debate. The fact that he is objectively being treated better than anyone else would be were they to be facing the exact same charges over the exact same documents is also an important thing to reiterate because Republicans have convinced themselves that he is being treated uniquely poorly in comparison to everyone else. That it's a two-tier justice system and only he is being treated unfairly. No, you would not have been able to go to a Cuban restaurant, then jet to New Jersey, and then go on the news. And you would not be able to do those things if you were anyone other than Donald Trump. maybe they'd let Buttigieg try to group. But anyway, yeah. So what do you think about the terms of his release? He is the former president. He is running for president, and Republicans would lose their minds if he was held pre-trial. But what do you think?
Yeah, lots of people end up getting released. It's one of those things, and we knew it's going to do it out of the privilege of who he is and the position he is and the types of media coverage he'd get if he's still in jail. I understand that, and if they want to keep him cool, if they let him go cool, because the worry about letting people go when they're criminals like this is there's a flight risk. If he takes off, you think nobody's gonna know where Donald Trump is in the world? Like Donald Trump goes around somewhere quietly and indiscreetly while he's trying to run for president again. What he does, he goes to a Cuban restaurant and then has a big announcement, sends out flyers to raise money, and then has speeches about it. He ain't going anywhere. I get I would love seeing him continue to be held, but the fact that he isn't, it's unfair. That's definitely not that's the truth. It's unfair, but it's absolutely expected, which again dispels this whole thing about no one ever in the history of the United States has been treated like this. Yeah, not the way he's been treated, which is really good.
Well, look, you're dismissive of the idea that he would run, but I actually employed the help of ChatGPT live on air yesterday to put together a synopsis for a novel about him fleeing to rural Italy and becoming an olive picker who learns about community, and ultimately it's a tale of redemption. But so it's possible. But anyway, I would also say if he were to try to run, let him. Just go. I don't care. I just fundamentally don't want him around. Assuming he goes on the lam, you know what he won't be able to do? Steal any more classified documents. He's not going to be near them. It sort of is a self-solving problem at that point. But anyway, I do want to turn to AOC. She was interviewed. Donald Trump is making these big claims about this being some sort of lefty commie plot or something. She was having none of it. Take a look.
It's not a surprise. During Trump's remarks, he was trying to somehow pin this as some great Marxist conspiracy. But the fact of the matter remains that this is an individual who retained US national security secrets, nuclear weapons locations, or nuclear site locations, sensitive materials, and put our nation at risk. And frankly, this is beyond just the Cuban community. The Latino community writ large in the United States also has a profound sense of patriotism and understands right from wrong, and from understanding political persecution, knowing that this is not it.
Yeah, look, I agree with her that it is not surprising the defensive moves that Donald Trump made after the arraignment. I didn't call necessarily specifically that he'd be going to a famous Cuban restaurant or whatever, and Cuban exiles would be rallying for him. People who actually have experienced some form of political persecution, communities that have constantly faced and still face political persecution, like some members of those seeing this entitled, spoiled billionaire whining and bleeding about the most minimal potential moves towards consequences for the crimes that he totally willingly committed and then bragged about on tape. That just seems super weird. You don't have to extend sympathy to a guy like that. You could focus on the fact that you've experienced far worse. What do you think?
It's one of those things. Look, I forget who said it. It was on one of the cable networks. And they're basically saying, he had many opportunities to then do these illegal things and then go back on it, and they wouldn't have done anything about it. The first time that they said, hey, you have all these documents and classified documents that we haven't seen come forward yet, let us come and check it out. And they come in and check it out. If they cleaned the house and got rid of all of them, it would have been over. Even though it shouldn't have been. It would have been over, but he kept more. Then he talked about how he kept more. Then after talking about how he kept more, he said, find a way to keep more from them the next time. And the next time they come, make sure you hide more. And make sure you try to make sure they never find this, that, and the third. It was consistent. He was going downhill with this process of obstructing and keeping this information. And no one stopped to ask, why? What does he want these things so badly for? How much does he not want them to have it back? Mike Pence had it, Joe Biden had it. I think they said other former president, maybe the Clintons even had stuff, Obama had stuff, and they gave it back.
Yeah, gave it back willingly, without having to be asked, without having to be rated. That said, I do maybe disagree with AOC in a further point that she makes. Take a look at this.
This is a twice impeached president, but when we rewind the tape and look at Donald Trump's first impeachment, He used and was unafraid to leverage the power of the United States government in an attempt to engage in an extortion scheme in Ukraine. He went to the Ukrainian government, he and his team, and engaged in, frankly, what we see as a conspiracy, and saying that he was willing to withhold and he was willing to hold congressionally mandated funds hostage in order to extract a fake political story about his political opponent, then now President Joe Biden. And I think from that history, and you see that same individual taking troves of documents, sensitive documents about the United States, I do not think we can rule out nefarious intent. I do not think we could rule out him trying to engage in transactional behavior, whether that be political or otherwise, for himself.
So I don't disagree with the basic philosophy of that. We know that he has been willing to use his position in the government to try to extract personal benefits. That's not questionable at this point. The only thing I disagree with is, like, we have learned a lot about how he held the documents, what he did with the documents, the nature of the documents. I am not ruling out the possibility that he would have been able to use it for like specific personal gain in terms of, money or political benefits or whatever. But we have not admittedly seen any evidence of that yet. He's shown it off to people. We've never seen evidence that he was showing it off to someone where it seems like the only interpretation is that he was gonna get something out of that. So I would just say that while she's not saying that he did it, she's just opening up the possibility. I think she's a little bit more convinced of the possibility than I am. And I know I disagree with Cenk about that too. He's much more convinced about that. I would just say it's already bad enough. If it's worse, but we should see evidence before we assume that it's worse.
To assume so, but to speculate it, I think makes sense. And by the way, why don't you think he would do that?
No, it's not. I'm not saying he wouldn't. I'm just saying there isn't yet evidence that he did.
I see. Well, I mean, if whoever's saying that he did explicitly like that, yeah, that's a problem. But then again, there's a track record as to the reasons why he would, and I don't think you disagree with that. So yeah, it's a bit of a fine line. I get it, but then I guess you mean jump the gun rather than wait and see it could be dangerous.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. But anyway, I think
I'll make sure I tell ALC that to call off the
call the dogs. Look, I like that she was one of the people brought on to respond to this. I think that she had a strong response. She stressed how significant the charges are, and I think presented that well. Anyway, with that said, I think we're gonna take our second break of the hour. When we come back, there's a different legal thing that we need to touch base with, and then we're gonna jump into some other news after this. Muad'Dib sent a comment that I was definitely thinking, how the turntables. Anyway, great reference. Okay, with that said, we have other news to get to, so why don't we jump into this? A New York judge has amended an appeal by E. Jean Carroll to amend the 2019 defamation lawsuit against former President Donald Trump to include additional damages from Trump for his recent comments defaming her, attacking her, slandering her during the CNN town hall last month. So remember where this is coming from. Last month, a jury found in favor of Carroll in her second civil lawsuit, which went to trial. The jury found that Trump sexually abused Carroll and defamed her by denying the attack, saying she wasn't his type and calling her allegations a hoax, amongst many other comments and all that. So she's seeking to amend the first lawsuit. That is still ongoing. I understand if you can't keep track of all of them, he is being sued, investigated by a lot of different people. So if you don't remember what this is in relation to, during the town hall, he effectively led the crowd in attacking the woman that he had just been found to have defamed. If you don't remember it, this is what it looked like.
I never met this woman. I never saw this woman. This woman said, I met her at the front door of Bergdorf Goodman, which I rarely go into other than for a couple of charities. I met her in the front door. She was about 60 years old, and this is like 22, 23 years ago. I met her in the front door of Bergdorf Goodman. I was immediately attracted to her, and she was immediately attracted to me. And we had this great chemistry. We're walking into a crowded department store. We had this great chemistry, and a few minutes later, we end up in a room, a dressing room of Bergdorf Goodman, right near the cash register. And then she found out there were locks on the door. So she said, I found one that was open. She found one. She learned this at trial.
It's absolutely disgusting. I mean, the stuff that he's saying is disgusting. The fact that he learned absolutely nothing from the experience of this trial. Like, he is more emboldened to mock her and lie about her, but that then the crowd starts laughing, that they love what they're hearing about this woman. So she is going to amend the complaint. She's seeking $10 million in new damages. He already owes her millions of dollars. It could balloon from there because he shows no sign of having learned from the experience.
Is there one thing that Donald Trump has stopped talking about? Is there one thing? Because he's having the same problem with this case now.
Vaccines.
Maybe. He did flip on that. You're right. Once he saw he could get some credit for it, then he's like, "Yo, vaccines for the win." Actually, once he almost died from it, that's when he flipped on it. No, everything that looks bad for him, after it looks the worst for him, he finds a way to make it even worse to her. Somehow, every time he's like, "Bro, STFU." It's very simple. Just do it once. Just do it one of these times, and then maybe you can skirt by without having to continue to talk about it. We have people talking about how he's scared about these latest accusations and latest arraignment and all that. Is he? He won't stop talking about it. I don't know, man. It's a simple solution just to this one part of the problem. The rest are still there, but just this one part.
I'm gonna give you a comment from Trump attorney Alina Habba in relation to this. She says, we maintain that she should not be permitted to retroactively change her legal theory at the 11th hour to avoid the consequences of an adverse finding against her. So some of you watching probably think, wait, what does that have to do with what we just said? I don't know, because that's the thing you say when you've been winning this whole time and now she's scrambling to change it up so that she has some desperate chance to this time have the jury side. No, she won the last one, you doink, you owe millions of dollars. And look, it's sort of conveniently confused, but it also just might be confused. I will remind you, Alina Habba is a lawyer, but there are many different types of lawyers. She's also going out and being a spokesperson with the classified documents thing. She does real estate law. She doesn't know anything about this, not necessarily any more than you or I do, but she's a lawyer, one of the few who will put her face on TV in defense of Donald Trump. So that's what you get. Avoid the consequences. Trump is the one who's gonna be trying to avoid paying off millions of dollars to E.G. and Carroll, and maybe more to come.
To honor the true meaning of Juneteenth, our entire administration is continuing to charge forward to literally redeem the soul of America. As the past few years remind us, our freedoms have been put at risk by racism that's still too powerful a force. You know, I was a kid in the civil rights movement. And I used to think, I honestly believed that you could defeat hate. But hate only hides. It hides under the rocks. And when given oxygen, just a little oxygen, it comes roaring back out again. And we have to stand up and deny it the oxygen. So Juneteenth, as a federal holiday, is meant to breathe a new life into the very essence of America. Choosing to remember history, not erase it. To read books, not ban them. No matter how hard some people try.
That is good commentary from Joe Biden. Of course, he's also the president, so in theory, doing stuff is good in addition to saying stuff, but the things that he said are good. It's important that people know about the history of Juneteenth, know why it's significant. In fact, he was joined not only by the vice president there, but also by Opal Lee, a 96-year-old activist whose advocacy helped to establish Juneteenth as the national holiday that it is right now. If you're not familiar with it, although every year that we say that, I start to think, but shouldn't people be at this point? But not everybody knows. It commemorates the day back in 1865 after the Confederate States had surrendered to end the Civil War, when a Union general arrived in Texas to inform a group of enslaved African Americans of their freedom under the Emancipation Proclamation. So that's all good. While that was running, Fox News decided to acknowledge that the president was speaking, but only so they could do this, putting up a lower third that says wannabe dictator speaks at the White House after having his political rival arrested. His political rival, by the way, who rose to prominence in American right-wing politics by spreading racist conspiracy theories about the citizenship, I suppose, the birth certificate of Barack Obama, just to provide a little bit of linkage to the whole racism and hate thing. Jayar, what do you think?
This is one of those things. Look, we celebrate and talk about how far we've come in this country. And many folks who say that are ones that are upset about that. So when it comes to something like celebrating Juneteenth, making it a national holiday, they also push back against that. Back in, I think it was in the 90s, they pushed back against MLK being a holiday as well. They want you to forget that stuff. Every time there's some kind of commemoration of Black Americans, and we're celebrating any kinds of change, approach to progress, equality, that's another bad word. It has to be covered with many folks on one particular side of the political aisle saying, hell no, not in my country, that's un-American. If you're happy about how far we've come in this country, Juneteenth should be a holiday. And all of these folks who say they're about how far we've come and how great of a nation we are, that should be the first thing you're talking about. It should not be embarrassing to say we were a country that enslaved people and they helped build the entire basis for our economic nature of our country. If you've gotten past that, you should be trying to shout it from the rooftops about how far you've come. Instead, we try to suppress it. Why is that?
Yeah, you would think, like, if your goal was to convince people that there's no racism, there hasn't been in decades or whatever, that you would be like talking up these sorts of things, like, hey, look at this amazing thing that we did. Let's recognize this moment when we conquered racism for the last time. Like, they'd be lying about it, but no, they're super defensive, which definitely says more than perhaps they intend it to. And we've been talking about the continued presence of racism. I don't think that for reasonable people, you need to be persuaded that it's still a problem. But just in case, I want to point you to Mount Sterling. This is Kentucky. There are flyers from a local Ku Klux Klan chapter that's promoting a neighborhood watch. And I personally think that a neighborhood watch, it's kind of an old-timey thing, but I think in some cases a neighborhood watch is a good thing. For instance, I would love to have my neighborhood watch out for the presence of the Ku Klux Klan, and if they see any evidence of it, definitely warn people. But anyway, they put this up. They sprung for the color printing, which is interesting, saying you can sleep sound tonight, the Klan is awake. Hey, Klan. Careful there, you came dangerously close to calling yourselves woke, and we wouldn't want that. Anyway, over 92% of the residents of Mount Sterling are white, and local officials and law enforcement, hopefully none of whom are members of the branch of the Klan, are saying that they're taking this very seriously. They're trying to identify the individuals who put them up, but so far it does not appear that they have any leads.
It's about time to come to realization when you keep denying what it is that we're talking about progress for and acknowledging it and actually maybe embracing it and being part of it, these things wouldn't happen as much. But when you don't, this is what we get. It's 2 + 2.
100%. By the way, this is like 92% white area or whatever. But you can find this all over. I will say from my own personal experience. I live in Inglewood, California, and I woke up one day to find that every house on my street had this like bag with some rocks in it and anti-Semitic literature, just attacking Jewish people and stuff like that, that clearly someone had been throwing out of their car or whatever as they drive around. So that's in like the heart of LA, supposedly lib place or whatever. But we see stuff like this, and these reports of, like KKK specific or other racist organizations, neo-Nazis and stuff like that. We've seen this from all over the place, man, all over the country. It's still very much a thing. They feel emboldened by the fact that more and more people in politics and in their podcasts and on TV and broadcasting on streaming seem to be much more in favor of this sort of thing. It used to be niche, it used to be radical and fringe, but not necessarily anymore. Anyway, wait, what happened? Oh, in Glendale, yeah, there was the the protest fights. With that said, that is unfortunately all the time we have for the first hour of the show. Thank you to those of you on the linear platforms listening on the podcast. As always, if you are listening to the podcast, first of all, thank you. I'm a big fan of podcasts myself. You can rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It's very important for making sure that new people see this, especially as we gear up for an election. So that would be much appreciated. I read all of those reviews, so thank you to those of you who take the minute out of your day to leave a little comment. They're always really nice. With that said, we do have more to come in the aftermath, including some fun news. Should you punch a Nazi? Indiana Jones weighs in, and Marjorie Greene once again comes out against education by her own words after this.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Damage Report. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, John Adarola. I'll see you soon.